So, Lori, thank you so much for being here again. I'm really excited for the conversation. And you've spent over 15 years building revenue systems and partner ecosystems inside really complex enterprise environments. And that really comes with driving serious growth, aligning cross-functional teams, and turning signal into scale. And I love that you talk so much about signal in your work. And right now, through the Liminal Signal Group and Storytime with Lori, you're really exploring something equally powerful. And I think that's something that we can agree a lot about, which includes identity, leadership, reinvention, and this human side of growth, this intangible capital, as I like to put it. And what I find compelling is that you hold both worlds, this operational architecture and this emotional clarity together. And so today I'd love to explore that through a communication and presence lens, especially in moments of transition, growth, and really high stakes. So with that, I think something I'm really interested in learning more about is you led inside really high pressure revenue environments for years. So when do you start to kind of see things going sideways in a partnership or a team, right? Like what's usually happening underneath the surface?
That's a great question, and a big question, because if you aren't focused first on people, that's when things are going to start going sideways. And so often people are so worried about either the technology piece or the end customer. Well, you got to start with your people first. And if you don't understand your people, if you're not invested in your people, then you don't have a good gauge on it. Your people aren't going to work as hard. They're not going to be as vulnerable to say, hey, here's what's going wrong. I'm seeing some things. They're either going to cower, they're going to kind of hide away. So if you're not invested in, if you're not really have your tentacles in your people, that's going to be your first sign. And so as I've stepped into the last 4 or 5 organizations, it's all been around change transformation, whether it's these large enterprises that are either going from on-prem to the cloud, that was back in the day, or they're just kind of rocking their ecosystem of, hey, we have too many, it's not working, the ROE with our direct sales team, we're not playing hand in hand and copacetically. And so a lot of it has all been around those hardships. And then you're going to throw COVID in there, and then you're going to throw in where we are as an economy in this fragile state. Things are very delicate right now, and you see tech companies gobbling up other tech companies, PE companies coming back in, and when a PE company comes in, you already know it's all around EBITDA and process oriented, and you got 5 people to do it, and so right. It's delicate. And so with that, if you're not really connected back to your people first, and so once you start to observe your people and then really kind of pull the sheets back, and I think where my talents have always helped me is I'm a revenue generator. I've always been a salesperson at heart. You don't see a lot of salespeople that really like the operations and the backbone and let me see the grit behind it. But I've always wanted to either get into a channel chief or potentially like a CRO. And if I didn't have that operational expertise, I'm not going to be able to get there. And through that, I need to understand the product. I need to understand the guts of the organization. And so when you see that either leadership isn't talking down to baseline and then making these decisions, and you're like, hey, I'm on baseline down here, and that's not how this rolls, homie, because you're going to break the ship. And so part of it is really understanding and really getting to having those vulnerable and those hard conversations with your people, and then seeing the outputs of it. Now, okay, I'm having these conversations. Now, what does the data tell me behind it? And so once you start to analyze all that data, and you start to see patterns, and then you start to see, okay, here's where we're not meeting. Here's where, do we overshoot it? How, like, we've got to fail hard and fast and cheap. And then how do we course correct real fast? So it's I think those two go hand in hand and then very much in tandem.
Absolutely. And so I guess it's not always just a spreadsheet issue, right? I mean, it's very much coming top down in both emotional and social contexts. But of course, there's more technicalities involved with it. And that's something I really admire you talking about as well. And going back to this concept of signal, right? Separating what really matters from the noise of it all. So
Mhm.
in leadership, how do you think then that narrative, or kind of from the top down, really shapes results before
Mhm.
results actually start shaping the narrative?
Mhm. I think you have to be intentional around it and focus in on, 3 to 5 things. So often, especially as a founder or somebody that's in charge, and you've got all these big ideas of it, but then you forget that there's all these other pieces and parts of it. And it's so if you're not tight on those 3 to 5 goals, build around those, and then literally, like, you can't, if it doesn't fit within there, you can't do it. And it is staying disciplined around that. And because once you're disciplined, once you align on that, then your messaging is clear, impactful, and tactful all at the same time. And then you can drop down into the next levels and then make sure that everyone is driving towards that. Because if you've got 10 or 15 things, it's like, okay, well, what's really a priority? And then you got all your worker bees over here, and they're thinking that they're making, big marker. And then finance is like, you're way off mark. And you're like, well, hey, he said that over there. And so
Right,
it's,
right.
you gotta tighten that up.
So do you see that leaders often underestimate how their communication is affecting the rest of the organization, the velocity the rest of the organization is going at?
Good ones.
Good ones, of course. Right, right. Well, I mean, in an ideal world, then why do you think that we get feedback from all of this kind of
Yeah.
technical information across revenue, across sales and marketing? Why do you think it's such a kind of misstep right now in organizations to get feedback on their communication and how they're actually interacting with employees, with partners, etc.?
Yeah. I think it really goes down to ego. You get into these bigger spots, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I'm in charge now, and it's a power thing. And so often you look at these leaders, and the higher they go, it's like their emotional intelligence is like, "Bloop, bloop, bloop," and then you're like, you're still the same. You're just a human. Like, we're all human beings. And you look at those really good leaders, they're the ones that are investing in tools, in certain leadership that make them better. If they're vulnerable of saying, hey, I really want to take a peek under here and see what's really going on with my organization, because we're at a pivotal moment. Either we're trying to go public, we're raising funds, we got new team members in here, new leadership. I really, they've got whatever moment they're guiding their ship towards. But if they're not intentional about it and wanting to understand and continue that growth, if growth in that connectedness is not important to them, they're not going to care about it. But you look at those leaders who use a tool like yours, who use leadership that is specific around emotional intelligence, because there's lots of companies that are really, really good at that and can really make an impact. But you got to go those layers. It's not just, hey, what's your strength? Let's do a strength finder here. That's just first base. There's so much more to it. And so, real good leaders, they want to do that, because if they've got, it gives you answers. And if you don't, it's like Cliff Notes, like, give me the answers here. I want, I can go pay somebody here real quick or invest in some money. Give me the answers, and I can quickly, patch this ship up and have an A team here. But I got to uncover all that. And so I think it's the leaders that want to invest in that.
Right, in that awareness, right? I mean, of course, when you have that awareness, of course, as you mentioned, from all these other kind of streams and verticals within the organization, but having that awareness on something so personal, like, well, how you're communicating with the rest of your team, that top down, how are they communicating back to you? How are you kind of setting the mark and setting these kind of targets? And if they're not getting delivered, right, then where's that misstep? And I think that's something that you also explore, right? And through Liminal Group, you explore kind of that space in between, when what worked no longer really fits, but what's next isn't fully formed yet. So how do you think that space feels like for leaders, like that in-between space when they're kind of going through this transition?
Oh, intriguing. There's a lot of curiosity to it. I think, some leaders are welcoming of it. Some are a little bit scared. And I think part of that is, you can feel lots of things all at once. And I think, that's the beautiful part. I always look at it like the more emotions to it, like, oh, cool. It's like a bigger gift because there's more at stake, and you're really tied to it. So for me, it is really taking a step back and really thinking about, okay, what am I feeling here? And being vulnerable in that moment.
Right. And I think that kind of brings me to the next point as well, is you yourself personally have reinvented yourself across, various different chapters, from operator to strategist, storyteller. Did you notice your own habits or communication shifting as your identity evolved?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I very critical of it. Back in college, I was taking a communications course. I was majoring in comm, and I loved it, but I didn't know what part I was going to go into. And I just always knew I loved to connect with people, but what facet that looked like, I'm not a technical person, but I can read and memorize a couple slides here and then tap in my friend here. But as I continue to grow in my roles itself, it was, you become a leader and then you're managing people. So your style changes versus, a direct, I'm carrying a bag, I've got a quote on my head. I don't care about anybody else but myself right now.
Mhm.
And then you're like, okay, then you go to, for me, it was like, what's next in my career? So I kind of fell into operations with, like a old end of life for hardware and software, and that kind of was intriguing. And so it was continuing. So then your scenario and your situation kind of evolve, and so does your lingo and how you're presenting yourself. And then you get into more of a leadership role, and then you start to develop strategy for companies and start to influence what's happening. You take the framework of what the infrastructure is with a company and start to refine that. And with that, I think you start to refine yourself a little bit more, because now you're like, okay, I've seen all shapes of the business. Now what is next for me in my evolution? And I haven't had a linear role, and I don't think that my mind would allow that either, just
Right,
because
right.
of my curiosity and a lot of different facets. But for me, I went through a few layoffs over the last few years with COVID happening, with budgets, with companies, folding into each other, so you can't have two of everything. And then I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? And one of my besties is like, you got to reinvent yourself. Like, why don't
Mm.
you do it yourself? And so it's like, well, why don't I? I can do some referral fees. I can help do some business development. I can connect some of my really good friends all together. They don't know each other and they can all do business, and I can be that middle person. Well, why would I not capitalize on that when I'm already doing that for a big business and they're getting all the funds? Why don't I do that for me? And
Absolutely.
so that's kind of how that evolved. And you're taking a big chance on yourself with believing in yourself, but you're like, I already believe in so myself under somebody else's payroll, but why not under my own, and capitalize on that, and then really do business with the people that you really love to do business with, and who are ethical, who think like you, who believe in you, who want to do really good in this world with what they're offering, what their platform is, whatever they're doing. You get to be a little bit more intentional with that, but with that, it takes time, it takes belief, it takes trial and error, and it takes a lot of grit, a little moxie, because you're bobbing and weaving left and right, and I remember going back to one of my first sales jobs was knocking on doors, selling DSL back in the day.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Right.
okay, I need to make $100 a day, and I knew that that was 3 lines. I needed to go sell, and so every door was a no, and then you're like, oh, cool, I'm almost, my law of averages, $38. And, so I look at like starting a business and reinventing yourself and starting it of like, okay, you said no. Okay, cool. I'll talk to you. You'll be back. You'll call me later, and, or it might not be time right now, but it's like, it is that ownership of, you had all this already, but it's reinventing yourself to what's making you most passionate and come alive in what you're doing. Cause I think that's really important, so often. And I think where we are in a society of convenience with AI and just, I need it now. But if we're so not invested in what really makes us come alive, then what are we doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially in a time like this where there's brand new technologies, and there's this fear of technology replacing actual workforce, right? I think it's important to try and understand, well, how can I actually augment my own human understanding and human
Mhm,
behavior with technology to help me become a better
mhm,
human, right, in the
mhm.
process. And so do you see that as you've gone through this tremendous growth, that your actual, the sound of your voice and the way that you interact with people has shifted in any way, in specific way?
Can I pause that real quick? My housekeeper's here. Can we just pause real fast? Let me
Yeah,
can
yeah,
I
yeah,
open
yeah, yeah, we can
that?
cut this. Yeah, we can cut
Yeah,
that.
what can you okay, hold on.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
no.
I thought I had locked the door. It's messy. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, of course, no worries.
Okay. All right. Will you ask that question one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like with the tremendous growth that you've had, right? You've had to reinvent yourself and grow across these different kind of roles. And it seems like this reinvention shows up more in your energy and your tone, right? Before it even shows up in the title that
Mhm,
you have.
mhm.
So related to that, have you ever walked into a room and felt that energy shifted based on how one person entered or how you entered it?
Oh, yes, yeah. Isn't that the best feeling? Like when you're, really connected or and somebody, whether that are, who's a really good person is Cass Cooper. I remember one of the
Yes,
first
I
times
spoke
I
with
met
her as
her.
well. Yes.
Yeah, I got you introduced to Cass, and it's just you're just like mesmerized by this. Somebody comes in and they have this like um yeah, it's just like they're radiant around them. You can already feel it. And you're like, gosh, you're a magnet. I need to know you and I want to know you and be around you. But it's also intoxicating because it's like it rubs off on you and you're like, okay, well, let me go take this fire now and let
Right,
me
let's
get
do
to
something
it.
with it.
Yeah. But then you also have the other opposite of like, I'm around somebody right now who's just completely sucked it out. And you're like, no, thank you. And so it is, I think that discernment is so critical in success and being it always goes back to that intuition and listening to your belly as well and like what really feels right and where do you want to put yourself because it really does change everything because work is hard. A job is hard. You're going to have really good moments and then you're going to have really bad moments and all the in between and
Mhm.
it is how you can put yourself in those moments where it's not the ladder that I just shared. It's that, give me those Cass Coopers where, you know, and it's where I get magnetized from it, but I'm not taking it from her either. Like we're both amplifying each other. And so it's like, how do you get around those people that really amplify your light?
Definitely, right. And light, like Noor, right? is what it means.
Yes.
And I mean, and that's a great point, right? I mean, I actually did speak with Cass as well. You had introduced us, and there's definitely like this energy that radiates, right, when you're speaking with someone like that. And so, do you
Yeah.
think that shows up more in posture, or does that show up in kind of their vocal tone, or can you feel the certainty of their words? Like, how would you kind of describe, why that is, that someone can instantly kind of light up a room and others kind of
Yeah.
don't?
Well, a couple things. I feel that well, I'm an empath, so I feel like I have an advantage. Like not everyone
Yes,
is.
I am too. Right.
So that's a good one, but it is also like kryptonite too because you feel a lot and you feel that. But um, I think for some people they just have to be aware, like they just have to be present, and it goes back to and especially with technology, it's taken so much away from all of us. It's not just the young generation, it's all of us. Cause like, come on now, I'm on my phone too. Half the time it's working or doing something on it, but I'm
Mhm.
not fully present in something. Or, you know, you hear a bing and then you're like, oh, hold on,
Right.
let me go
Get
get the
on
door.
TikTok.
All of it. So, you know, I think when it is us as a generation to really work on having all of this technology for our advantage, but also taking a step back and really understanding we've got to have that balance between disconnect and reconnect to nature, to self, and just to be more present, because it's so easy not to. And then we miss a gift that's walking by, like Cass, because you were like, oh, I was talking over here and I didn't get what she first said, or I missed half of it. And I didn't get what the message was because I was chit-chatting, or I was scrolling on my phone at the same time I was
Mhm.
answering an email while listening to, you know, a virtual call, and multitasking, which we all do. So it's really being cognizant and aware of giving that person, you specifically showed up for this person, and it's giving them, you know, all the respect of time and your presence, because it's a gift to all. You're going to get something from it. So it's just that reminder of, hey, self, like, check back in here.
Definitely. And how do you see technology helping people be more present and be more in the moment? What would be some things that you would expect technology to help you do?
Oh gosh, well, lots of things. Like I love it right now from a, will help me get crafty with kind of managing all of this stuff that I have to do, like help me manage my calendar. What's my priority? Um, I'm not good. Like, you know, now all of a sudden I've got all these new tools that I'm having to do with trying to run a business, like trying to have outreach. Now I'm like recording and I'm like, you know,
Yeah,
my
right.
son always laughs at me because he's like, you sell technology, but you don't like it. I'm like, you're right. But it gives me money to do the things that we like to do. But part of
Exactly.
it is it's because I move fast in life, and then I feel like these, you know, slow me down, but I just got to get used to it. And so, you know, you look at tools, and that's where some people are afraid to use it because it's like, oh, I still like my Yahoo. I don't want to go to Gmail. I'm used to this. And so there's some hesitation with it, but it's also like, if you just give it enough time to get used to it, it's going to accelerate you to have more outreach, to shrink the time it would take you to do something. Instead of it taking you 5 hours, it can now take you 30 minutes. So you think about that 4.5 hours, what are you going to do with that? And that helps me. Oh, well, now I can go get a workout in, and now I've got some balance in there too. And so you look at the tools of not being afraid to use them, not being afraid that, oh my God, I'm going to get completely replaced. Now, some will be replaced, but jobs are shifting. So you have to think about it too, of like, okay, you know, now we're going to have all these, you know, data centers everywhere. Well, we're going to have more builders, plumbers, more mechanics, and, you know, you're going to have plumbers. Like, jobs will shift, and then advancements will happen. And so, but it's part of us. This is industry 4.0. We've done it 3 other times where, you know, we've had to evolve. And so yes, it's there's so many benefits to it, but then, you know, the people that are also building it, we want to remember to be humane, and to remember, as we're building that out, what does that mean? And there, you know, you've got this race to get there first, and we don't even know what the first is. And so um,
Sitting in the dark.
yeah, but it's being still thoughtful on how you're building something out, you know, to include, to be inclusive.
Definitely. And to just wrap it up, you know, as a leader yourself, and being so supportive to leaders across the many years of work that you've done right across these different verticals, when people actually become aware, as we mentioned before, of things like their communication patterns, especially in moments of growth or pressure, and to actually be present in those situations, what do you think would change as people start to become more aware of how they're coming across to another person?
Hmm. That's such a thoughtful question. And I wish more people would just pause and be more invested in their people. If companies would lead with people first before anything else, their people, I think everything would change. You were going to get The people that are doing it well, they've got great employee retention, which ultimately will yield to higher customer retention. If you're not delighting, if you're not learning, if you're not growing, if you're not stretching, if you're not challenging them, if you're not forgiving them, if you're not being vulnerable with them, how can you have all that success? You're spending more time rehiring, not having the right people in place. You're causing more friction if you would just be more intentional and authentic with the start of it. So, I feel that if more leaders took the time and really did therapy and self-improvement and self-investment in their business and in their people, so often they're so worried, well, that's not on my budget. I didn't have, people investment on my budget. Well, snip it from somewhere else, because if you don't, then you've got a bigger problem and a long-term problem. And so much is at stake if you're not really invested in your people first.
Absolutely. And that's something that that we're working on as well, right? Is to help you become more aware and
Yeah.
present and trying to understand, well, am I actually coming across in the way that I intend to, so that I can carry out the job, right, that I was assigned to, or that I I am now part of. So thank you again, Lori. This has been such a thoughtful and engaging conversation, and we really appreciate you joining us and going into both human depth and more operational clarity. And so for anyone listening who resonated with this, where is the best place to follow along more with your work, whether that be the Liminal Group or Storytime with Lori? Where can they check you out?
Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Check me out at Storytime with Lori, LORI.com, or Liminal Signal Group. You can reach out to me that way.
Awesome. We'll make sure to link everything. Thank you again, Lori.